The stars stretched across the void, a cold sea of ancient light, endless and pitiless, and cutting through that silence, like a blade of iron faith, came the spear of destiny. It was no mere ship. It was a fortress of steel and devotion, a cathedral built for war. Its engines sang the Emperor's hymn. Its banners bore the mark of the imperial truth, and its guns spoke the only language left in the galaxy: fire. The War Master had sent his sons aboard her, and with them went the weight of the Great Crusade's dream. Captain Garviel Loken stood upon the embarkation deck, his armor freshly polished, yet scarred from the wars of the Ashen Moon. Around him, hundreds of Luna wolves marched in perfect silence. The only sound was the hum of the void shields and the slow pulse of the ship's heart. The spear of destiny awaited them like a beast of legend. Her prow was carved with angelic figures, once symbols of faith, now hollow monuments to the Emperor's reason. The irony was not lost on Loken. "Strange, isn't it?" murmured Torgadon beside him. "Every world we bring to compliance, every victory we claim, and yet it feels like the stars grow colder." Loken's eyes lingered on the distant hangar lights. "Perhaps it's not the stars that change, Tarek. Perhaps it's us." The purpose of the mission. The Spear of Destiny had been summoned to carry a delegation, part diplomatic, part punitive. The Imperium had found another lost human civilization, one proud and ancient, ruled by kings who called themselves the Keepers of the Word. They claimed allegiance to the old pantheons of Terra, worshipping gods the Imperium had long buried. The Emperor's order was clear: bring them into compliance. If they resisted, destroy them utterly. But among the high decks of the ship, there was unease. For this mission was not merely conquest, it was judgment. The ghosts in the hull. As the Spear of Destiny moved through the warp, the air grew heavy, as though the ship itself breathed. The remembrancers whispered that they heard voices in the corridors, echoes of dead warriors crying through the steel. Keeler, the quiet chronicler, carried her picked capture through the lower decks. Her lens flickered as she recorded. Every frame carried strange distortions, phantom outlines, eyes in the dark, shapes that vanished when she blinked. "The machine spirits are uneasy," said a tech priest, his voice flat through his Vox mask. "The ship remembers battles long past." Keeler frowned. "Can a ship remember?" The priest turned his mechanical face toward her. "In the Imperium, everything remembers." The War Council. Within the Strategium, the War Master's command staff gathered around the luminous map of the galaxy. Horus himself did not attend. He remained aboard the vengeful spirit, watching from afar. In his stead, his captains stood like statues of iron: Loken, Abaddon, Torgadon, and the grim figure of Eidolon from the Emperor's Children. The room was thick with rivalry and pride. Each legion bore its own scars, its own version of perfection. "The world ahead refuses to bend the knee," Eidolon said coldly. "Their rulers speak of honor and heritage, superstition, old gods. We should burn them to ash and move on." Abaddon's glare was sharp. "We were not sent to burn. The War Master demands compliance, not annihilation. Loken's voice cut through the tension. And if compliance means surrender through fear, not faith? Abaddon turned, his armor creaking. Faith? You sound like a remembrancer, Loken. I sound like a soldier who's tired of killing men who could have been our brothers, Loken replied quietly. The silence that followed was colder than the void, the warp disturbance. Then, without warning, the ship shuddered. Lights dimmed. The void shields screamed. Something vast and unseen brushed against the hull like a serpent of shadows. Warp surge, a helmsman cried. It's not natural. Loken grabbed the railing as the ship lurched. Through the viewports, the stars twisted, stretching into streaks of light, bleeding red and violet. By Terra, whispered Torgadon, staring into the maelstrom. What is that? For a heartbeat, they saw it, a shape in the storm. Not a ship, not a god. Something older, something watching. Then it was gone. The alarms silenced. The spear of destiny stabilized, but the fear remained. Even the most fearless of the Astartes glanced at one another, their gene-forged hearts thudding with something they refused to name. A message. Hours later, in the quiet of his quarters, Loken received a transmission from the vengeful spirit. It was the War Master himself. Garviel, Horus said, his voice low and heavy. The warp is restless. You must proceed with caution. Loken bowed. As you command, my lord. Horus's gaze softened. There are whispers of something stirring. Be vigilant, and remember, the Emperor's light does not reach everywhere. The message ended. The Vox crackled and fell silent. Loken stood there for a long time, staring into the dark. His reflection in the mirror looked older, more haunted. Perhaps it was the warp, or perhaps it was something far worse, doubt. The silence of the wolves. That night, the ship's chapel was quiet. A few Astartes knelt before the banners of their legion, offering silent prayers they would never admit to saying. Loken walked among them, feeling the weight of the silence. He passed by a young warrior, a new recruit. The boy's eyes were wide, his voice trembling. "Sir," he asked, "do you ever feel like something watches us when we travel the warp?" Loken paused, glancing toward the flickering candlelight. "Yes," he said softly, "and I think it always has." The boy swallowed hard. "Then why do we keep going?" Loken's eyes darkened. "Because if we stop, we're already lost." Ending, Scene Part 1. As the spear of destiny dropped out of the warp, the stars reappeared, bright and sharp, cold and endless. Before them lay a world of gold and marble, its continents shaped like wings. It was beautiful, and it would soon burn. The Vox crackled with command orders. Prepare for descent. Compliance operation begins at dawn. Loken turned to the viewport. His voice was barely a whisper. "Another world for the Emperor," he said. "Another piece of our soul for the void." A descent drop pod screamed through the atmosphere, burning trails of fire into the blue heavens. The roar of re-entry was like the cry of dragons. Inside one pod, Loken sat motionless, hands clasped on his bolter, eyes closed. The world rushed toward him. He remembered Horus's warning. The Emperor's light does not reach everywhere. And for the first time, he wondered if they were still bringing light at all. Impact. The pod slammed into the ground. Doors blew open. Smoke and ash poured in. The Luna wolves charged out like silver ghosts of death. The city of statues. They landed in the capital, Veradorn, a city carved from mountains, its walls engraved with 1,000 gods. Loken's squad moved through streets lined with silent watchers. The people of Carthenia, unarmed but unbowed. The tallest statue stood above the palace, a robed figure holding a spear pointed skyward. Beneath Torgadon spat. These fools think faith will save them. Loken stared at the statue. Maybe it already has. A moment later, the city's horns began to wail. From every street came the sound of defiance, drums, voices, and the thunder of armored footsteps. Carthenia would not surrender quietly. The Battle of Varadorn. Flames rose, bolters roared. The marble city became a furnace of smoke and "Hold your fire," Loken replied. Hold? They're the enemy. No, Loken whispered. They're humanity, just like us. But the order to fire came from above, not from Loken, not even from Horus. It came from the High Lords aboard the Spear of Destiny. And so the palace burned. The Spear's secret. When the smoke cleared, the Spear of Destiny returned to orbit. But Loken could not rest. He walked alone through the ship's corridors. Drawn toward the chamber, none dared enter. The vault beneath the command deck. There, he found a thing no remembrancer had ever seen. Rows of containment crypts, sealed with sigils of the sigillite. Inside them pulsed faint, golden light. He stepped closer and felt warmth, a human heartbeat, but not of the living, of something stored, something divine. Then a voice behind him, cold and sharp. Curiosity can be dangerous, Captain. Eidolon stood in the doorway, his pale features twisted in contempt. The Spear of Destiny carries relics from the Emperor's private vaults. Things mortals cannot comprehend. You will forget what you've seen. Loken met his gaze, and if I don't, Eidolon smiled. Then you'll learn why some truths are buried with blood. Horus's reflection. Later, aboard the vengeful spirit, Horus stood before the stars, watching the flames fade from Carthenia's surface. His expression was unreadable. Russ's words from Ashenmoon echoed in his mind. How many worlds must we burn before we forget why we began? He turned to his hololink, showing the Spear of Destiny returning to formation, proud, unbroken, yet haunted. Another victory, he said softly, but the words tasted of ash. Epilogue. In her quarters, Keeler reviewed her recordings. Images of statues shattered, temples burning, and children staring into the camera with silent eyes. She whispered a prayer she no longer believed. The Emperor protects. Loken entered quietly. His armor was scorched, his eyes shadowed. Delete it, he said. Keeler looked up. You want the truth erased? Loken's jaw tightened. No, I want it remembered. When it's safe to remember. She nodded slowly. Then we'll hide it. In the archive, no one reads. Final scene. As the fleet left orbit, the planet below became a memory. Another line in the endless record of compliance. But in the silence of the void, the spear of destiny seemed to hum with something ancient, something restless. It had carried victory, and with it, the burden of sin. And deep within its vaults, the faint golden light still pulsed, unseen, unforgotten. Loken looked through the viewport one last time. "Perhaps," he murmured, "the real destiny of this spear is to pierce the hearts of those who wield it."